Baruch Hashem, you're a bad Jew.
Shalom.
Hey, Hud Sameach, and welcome back to another episode of Bad Jew, the place where there is no such thing as a bad Jew. And with me today is Rabbi Yitz Jacobs, a friend, a colleague, a coworker, so many wonderful things. Rabbi Jacobs, how are you today?
Great. How are you doing, Chaz?
I'm doing fantastic, and I want to thank you again for being willing to be on my podcast. I'm really excited to learn about the holiday of Sukkot specifically, and then also to learn also about yourself. But speaking about learning about yourself, we have the right of entry onto this podcast, the 4-minute Bad Jew Challenge, where you tell your life story in 4 minutes. Are you ready?
Yes. Ready.
Excellent. 5 times lows. Yalla.
Life story starts on Long Island. Grew up in a Reform, very secular family. Became an atheist when I went to Cornell. Decided that as a scientist, I had to be rational, and all my teachers were extremely anti-God and basically told us that if we wanted to be a modern, sophisticated, scientific person, we had to kind of throw out all that old garbage and superstition. And I had a lot of questions in life. So I was looking at psychology and all kinds of things. And at some point, I continued as a biology major. I then moved into getting a master's in public administration, also at Cornell. And then I went to DC to live for 2 years, working for a consulting firm called Booz Allen and Hamilton. And while there, I was there for 2 years, and I decided that I wanted to travel for the summer. Of course, I had applied to law school, and I got into University of Virginia Law School after my 2 years. So I had this block of time between working and starting law school. Where am I going to go? And my calling was to go to Israel. I was supposed to go there junior year abroad, but it was considered to be too dangerous. So instead, I went to England. And I remember when I was in England, I was in the tube, their subway, and I was down there, and there was red alerts, the IRA, the Irish resistance movement, there was bomb threats, and I'm running to, I'm thinking this is safer than Israel. So anyway, I hadn't had that opportunity to go to Israel and explore my Jewish roots. So I decided to spend that summer. So I applied for this program. It was with Aish, a program called the Jerusalem Fellowships. It was a month. It combined studying Judaism, it combined touring, and it also combined politics, going to the Knesset, meeting with influential politicians. And it sounded like an unbelievably all-around package for me to go. And I went not expecting it to change my life. As I said, I was an atheist. I had pretty much denounced Judaism. And I went in with an open mind, and I started to learn. And I started to understand how Jews think and what Jews really believed in a very sophisticated way. And, for instance, the very first thing was this idea of God. So for me, God was this like kind of big tyrant in the sky, and when Judaism said, no, that's idolatry to think about it like that. That's pagan. God is an infinite source. God is infused in everything. You cannot, right? And all of a sudden, I'm like, wow, that's what I believe, So I kept getting this inner confirmation of what they were teaching me was really deeply ingrained in who I was. And I was very enthralled and fascinated. So I ended up deferring law school, continuing to study. Another year, deferred law school, continued to study until I finally ended up changing my trajectory, becoming a rabbi, and moving to LA in order to share the inspiration that I had gained with fellow Jews.
Awesome. Rabbi Jacobs, I mean, that's amazing. And there's a lot that I can relate to in that too, just in the fact that, at a certain point in my life, around the time of college as well, I also called myself an atheist at probably one point, then called myself Reform at another point, was happy to eat burritos during Yom Kippur, whatever, right? And that was totally me. So I can totally relate to that. I think you have a cool story, and I think it's amazing that you chose to come back to continue sharing what you're learning. Just one thing I want to ask about your story: why Los Angeles?
Wow. Honestly, there was a couple of opportunities. I wanted to go to New York. My family was all there. My wife, who's originally from LA, but her mother had moved to the East Coast and her father had passed away. So there was really no family ties. Oh, my wife has a brother that's in Orange County. But the majority of all parents were on the East Coast. But New York, the Aish division in New York did not have an opportunity. And the other two that were kind of the most available was LA and South Africa. And even though South Africa sounded extremely exotic, it just wasn't quite the speed I was ready to do.
Yeah. Makes
So,
the choices a lot
we
easier.
figured we would start in LA and we would see where it took us, and it was an amazing fit.
Well, thank you for sharing. So, Rabbi Jacobs, it's really a treat to have you on the podcast. Like I said before, let's get into it. Let's talk about the topic of this episode. Every single holiday, we get into this wooden, not so well constructed shack, and then we grab fruit and sticks and we shake them all around. Why are we doing that? Why are we shaking around fruit and sticks on the holiday of Sukkot?
Okay, so we're going to get a little deep. So first of all, understand where we are in the Jewish cycle. Okay, because nothing happens in a vacuum. So we just finished Rosh Hashanah. On Rosh Hashanah, we were supposed to gain an understanding of who we truly were, what our purpose is, and what we want to manifest in our coming year. Okay, it's a manifestation holiday. It's called the Rosh, which means the head of the Shana, of the year. The head of the Shana, a year has to have a head to it. And that head is what's envisioning where you want to go, the future you want to build. Yom Kippur comes to help us understand what gets in the way. What blocks us from manifesting? What blocks us from creating that life of our dreams? So we work on the roots of the issues that take us off track from our ideals, take us off track from our best life, our best self. And we uproot them on Yom Kippur. And we come out of Yom Kippur in this state of wholesome purity, of completion, of the state of refreshed and ready. Okay, what's next? What happens next? What do you think needs to happen next?
So we set the goals, then we figure out what's blocking our way. Just starting it, I guess, just going for it, I would imagine.
Yeah. Now we got to actually do something.
Right.
Now we got to build something. Now we got to make something happen in the world. Now we got to take that vision and we got to start concretizing it in the world in a tangible way. Right?
Right.
So Sukkot is that third step. We do two main things. One is we build a sukkah. Two is we take these four species and we do this whole ceremony of waving them. And look, a lot of different traditions use palm branches. I know there's Palm Sunday in Christianity, and I'm sure it symbolizes something for them as well, right? So obviously these things all symbolize very deep, meaningful ideas and concepts. So what are we building now? So the sukkah and the four species are very related. Okay, the sukkah is a little bit more clear to illustrate what it is. And then we'll use that as our template for the four species. Okay. So the sukkah, literally, what do we believe is the source of our security in this physical world, in our physical life for our year? What do we rely on for our source of security typically?
I would imagine God, right? Because that's what we're praying to every day.
So that's who we should rely on.
Right.
But what do we typically rely on? Honestly, we're all the same.
Like locked doors and having a gun or having weapons around and
our stuff,
security systems and cameras. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we rely on. Okay. Yeah. So what we do on Sukkot is we build a space outside of our protected environments, okay, outside of our enclosed, sheltered, and we build this magical space. It's supposed to be on the level of the Garden of Eden. Okay. And in this space, we understand that our true source and our true protection is only God. And it's supposed to resemble the clouds of glory that protected the Jews in the desert during our 40 years. Okay. So
what are the clouds of glory? Can you elaborate on that?
So when we left Egypt, we entered into a desert. A desert is not a nice place. Okay, a desert is a extremely brutal place filled with types of venomous, scorpions and snakes and harsh environmental conditions and no water. So God did, and no food, right? So God did three things. One, he rained food down from heaven. Two, he created the air, this rock, which emitted water to create fresh water. And three, he climate controlled us by surrounding us with these clouds of glory. So we had this idyllic existence in the desert. Okay. So the sukkah represents once again being enfolded, being protected, being contained directly by God in these clouds of glory, and understanding that that is the source of our protection. Okay, it's nothing else. And we know in the end of the day, like, who's going to help us when we get sick? Medicine can help us so far, but so much depends upon God. So much of our happiness and our health and what happens and how our life manifests depends on God. And, we need to keep that as the focus. It's like, there's a Talmudic saying, if there's a dog, right, and you take a stick and you start like kind of playing with it. So what does it do? It attacks the stick, right?
Right.
Well, let's say it was smart and it wanted to stop the stick from bothering it. Let's say it was bothering it, the stick. So what should the dog do? Keep attacking the stick? What should it do?
It'll attack the human.
Attack the person holding the stick.
Right.
But so many times we just sit there in life and we attack the stick and not the source of who's holding the stick. So God is the source of everything that's happening to us. And we need to trace everything back to that so that we can really learn the lessons of life. So the sukkah represents this amazing space where we open up and rely on God. And we understand that this life, just like this sukkah, is a temporary, insubstantial, immaterial place. It's just a transition place.
So
Go
ahead. No, go on.
Yeah, the sukkah represents really our life experience. That this lifetime is this insubstantial, temporary place, and it's leading to something that's forever. So we actually enter into the real experience of life by leaving our homes and entering into this outside experience of the sukkah.
It's a really cool interpretation of it, and I like that a lot. So to relate this back to the high holidays and what everything means, right? Rosh Hashanah, you're planning for the year. Yom Kippur, you're figuring out what's going to hold you back. And Sukkot, you're
Connecting everything in our lives, our tangible lives, our material lives, and our efforts to God.
Right. While also acknowledging that we're temporary, we're not perfect. And I guess we have to put in the work, but also have the faith in God as well.
Exactly.
Okay.
We're building a material reality connected to God. That's what we're doing on Sukkot.
Okay. Amazing. Okay. So then you build the shack, right? I'm going to call it a shack.
And we beautify it. It's a mitzvah to make it beautiful. So
Right.
to call it a shack is actually, it's supposed to be more like the Garden of Eden,
right,
than a shack. So it's like
Right.
your finest china, your finest everything in the sukkah.
Okay. Beautiful.
Yeah.
And I say that, by the way, rhetorically, not actually meaning it.
Yeah.
I want everyone to know that right now. I don't mean to lower the significance of what a sukkah is. Okay, so you create the sukkah, right? And you put in your finest china, and I mean, I've seen them before. They're beautifully decorated. Some of them have like a lot of great kids drawings on them. Some of them have, it's like a lot of nature, and like some people like try to like grow vines into it. Some people kind of keep them all year round. I've also heard too, which seems kind of fun as well. But as for when you actually have the sukkah, that's not all you have to do to celebrate the holiday of Sukkot either. And we'll get to the sticks and the fruit in a second. But like, what else do you do once you have the sukkah?
I mean, you're supposed to have festive meals with family and with guests. And guests are a very big part of it because you're trying to create a lot of unity. One of the big themes of Sukkot is connecting all the parts into unity. Just like we're connecting all the parts of our material lives to God, we're connecting everything to the one, to oneness. Okay, that means different types of people. We're trying to bring and connect. And that has a lot to do with the 4 species, with the stick and the fruit. Okay, that's one of the major themes of the stick and the fruit.
The 4 species of what exactly?
The 4, well, we call the lulav and the esrog, we call them the 4 species.
But there's only 2
actually
of them.
4 species. What?
But there's only 2 of them.
No. There's a lulav and an esrog.
Right.
And then there is 2 myrtle branches and 3 willow branches.
Really? Okay.
Yep. If you look at the pictures. So there's actually 7 individual plant things and, 7 individual plants of 4 species. Because there's 1 lulav, 1 esrog, 2 myrtle, and then 3 hadassim, 3 willow, and that represents 7.
What is that? First of all, is there a gematria behind the number? Because the gematria is the study of numbers in Judaica. For those who are listening, is there a gematria behind the numbers? Because I've always been fascinated by that. Is there a reason for that?
Tremendous significance behind the numbers.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. So in Judaism, we understand that there are 6 dimensions to physical reality: up, down, right, left, forward, and back. And then there's the center point, the inner point, which represents, for instance, Shabbat. We have 6 days of the week. And then there's that inner dimension to the week, which is called Shabbat. So those 7 species, and we wave them how? Up, down, front, back, right? We wave them, and then we hold it each time we bring it back to our heart. Okay, so we're literally connecting all the dimensions of physical reality to the inner dimension at the focal point of our hearts. Okay, and we're trying to channel God down into our bodies, into our heart, and from our heart out into the world. Okay, that's the idea of waving the species. There's lots of different ways that people create symbolism, and the rabbis have created symbolism for the 4 species. Lots of different ways. You can Google all these different ways. They more or less boil down to combining 4 different elements into oneness. Okay?
Wow.
I'll give you one interesting example that you probably won't hear anywhere else. So they represent different levels of effort to transform the physical world. Okay, because we're talking about manifesting the physical world and connecting the material to the spiritual, right? So if you think about it, we have the myrtle branches. Okay, myrtle branches represent smell, okay, fragrance. They're not edible, right? You don't eat them, but they have this amazing smell. So something like fragrance, you just literally can utilize immediately. If something smells good, I mean, you might like kind of, maybe rub it a little bit, but it's already pretty much accessible. Smell is something which, without any refinement, you can access from the physical world. The next level is the palm branch. The palm branch is the fruit of the date tree. Okay, fruit represents food. Food is something that some of it you can just eat without any refinement, but as we know, a lot of food needs preparation, it needs refinement, it needs our input. And creating holiness in the way that we use the physical world that takes that type of refinement, okay, is the second level. The next one is the willow branch. Okay, so the willow, it doesn't have smell, it doesn't produce fruit. So the use is typically for the wood, if there's a use, right?
Like to build something.
To build something. Now, to build something takes a tremendous amount of effort. You have to totally change this wood. You have to cut it and, right, shape it, and you have to transform it into something new, pretty much. That's a tremendous amount of human involvement in the physical world. And then the last thing is the esrog. And what's the significance of the esrog? The first 3 represent the effort, and that's considered to be kind of the male element, is the activity, the effort, the active effort. The esrog is considered to be the female element, the part that's already perfect, the part that's already completed, the part that's already refined, that's already in the Garden of Eden. Okay. And right now, what we're doing is we're taking that male element, which is the effort, and we're combining it with what's called the female element or the fruit. Okay. To create this amazing synthesis. So there's something special about the esrog. It says that in the Garden of Eden, God commanded the trees to bear fruit. And he originally had intended these fruit trees to be, in the sense, like a vegetable. A vegetable, you can eat the actual stem, you can eat the leaves, right? It's all edible. And he had intended originally that these trees should have edible stems, edible leaves, and edible fruit. And it says in this analogy, in this parable, that the trees rebelled and they wanted to make sure that only their fruit was edible and not the rest of them. So they created this like hard encasing of wood and bark. Okay. So what was the motivation between this rebellion? What was the motivation?
It's a tree. You're talking about a tree rebelling against God.
So right now, there's no real trees. These are all concepts, energetic concepts in the spiritual world.
Right.
They're all going to be infused. This is the DNA of our creation. This is what's creating free will. We'll see why. This is putting the area. So what do you think was the impetus for the trees to not want to be completely edible?
I couldn't even put myself in the shoes of trees don't have shoes. So the expression doesn't even work. I don't
Think of
even
them
know.
as trees now. Think of them as our DNA, the DNA of life itself.
Why would the DNA of life itself rebel against God?
Rebel against this arrangement.
Not all of them want to bear fruit. I don't know. Or bear vegetables. I'm not sure.
It's self-preservation. If the entire entity was edible, then it was more vulnerable than if only one small part of it was edible. Right? It's self-preservation. So what this means is that God put inside life a desire for self-preservation. Do we all have this? Is this unique to all life? Yes. All life has an instinct for survival and self-preservation. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's part of our endowment as human beings. And this is when God infused it into the creation. Now, it says that there was one tree that actually didn't rebel.
The apple tree?
No.
I have no clue.
Come on, what are we talking about?
It's one of the species in the that we shake, isn't it? It's the
Esrog tree.
The esrog, yeah.
Okay. And even
the apple
today,
tree was a dumb guess. That was a dumb guess. Okay, got it.
yeah. Don't be hard on yourself. So look, even today, when you smell the bark of the esrog tree, it smells like the esrog. It's an interesting thing. It actually really does. It's not edible. But again, these are all before there were concrete trees. These are all like kind of the DNA concepts in life. But now we know that there's one kind of tree that contains in it the ability to rise above that self-preservation instinct and to really be a partner with God. And that's the esrog. That's that perfection where we're all trying to head, okay, to the elevated enlightened state. So we take the three species, which represent our physical actions in this world, and our desire to, express ourselves, and our desire to transform the world, and our desire to write the 6 days of the week, and we combine it with the esrog, which is the connection to God. Okay, we put them together, and then we actually shake them in all 6 directions. Okay, and that is the way that we live in the sukkah to create this amazing space that's connected to God. And then we direct our actions in all directions to channel God into the world. And that is the beauty of Sukkot. That is the glory of Sukkot. That is the splendor of Sukkot. It's just that connection to God, which turns everything into the Garden of Eden. So you literally feel like your life has been transformed in this amazing way.
It's beautiful. But So question for you, backing up, and this might be me connecting dots that were never meant to be connected in the first place. We always hear the expression, the tree of life in Judaism. Is the esrog tree the tree of life?
So,
Or is that too far of a reach there?
so there is a tradition that there's a debate in the Talmud. Okay, which species was the tree of life? And there are at least 4 different opinions. One of them is the esrog. This does not mean that one of them is right and the rest are wrong. Because back in this part of creation, things weren't as defined as they are now. So this thing that was called the tree of life had an element of the esrog, but it had an element of these other things as well. Okay, it was more than just one species. So they're all kind of explaining a dimension of this fruit. So it's not as simple as what you're saying, but yes, it's true that the esrog was part of that tree of life.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
That makes
Fascinating.
sense.
Yeah. So I've kind of connected a dot. The dots, it's questionable to connect it, but it is reasonable to think.
Yeah, you did connect it.
Yeah.
You did connect it. You're right on.
Right. Wow.
It's part of that. Yes. But that is even more than the esrog.
Right. It's yes and.
It's yes and.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay. Good to know, because it's always been like this figurative thing. You always hear about it. I mean, even the synagogue I grew up at growing up, which I interviewed the rabbi on recently. The rabbi's name was Rabbi Ari Auerbach. And I the synagogue I grew up at was called Temple Chaim, right? It's a conservative synagogue back in the day. Tree of Life. That's what it stands for. So yeah, I've always been kind of curious, like, what is it, just a figurative idea, or is there actual interpretation? So it's yes and. Okay, now we know. Mystery solved. Interesting. Rabbi Jacobs, what's your favorite part about Sukkot?
Wow. I actually build a beautiful sukkah.
Really?
It's magical. You should come see it.
Really? I really
Yeah.
want to.
We put like these hanging curtains on rods around the entire Sukkot. You know how like those weddings where they're the white curtains everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So we do different like Moroccan style
Okay.
curtains all around. You walk in, it looks like an I Dream of Genie bottle. You guys know even that is I Dream of Genie?
You know what? Somehow I actually do know that reference.
Okay, so it looks like this,
Yeah.
like it's just this, and then we have lights, and you walk in, and it's just this magical transformed space, and then we have meals and fun, and guests, and it's just a great feel, and it brings everyone together, which is what Sukkot is all about.
I love that. Okay, wait. I do have one question, because I just remembered a question I thought of earlier that I never got to ask, and then we're going to wrap up this episode, okay? You talked about, like, going back to the kind of the main point you made at the beginning of this episode, which is about how Rosh Hashanah is about setting your goals. Yom Kippur is about figuring out what's going to take down those roadblocks. Then you identified Sukkot as putting these ideas into action, right? But part of that, like part of the pillar of that action, involves unity with bringing in guests, okay?
That's part of the motivation for our actions.
Well, one thing that I was really fascinated by is the idea that with the way that you describe Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, that's very individual. That's very much centered around yourself and how you can reach your full potential. But then you get to Sukkot, and suddenly you have to start thinking about the greater good. Why is that?
It's interesting because it's not like that. Because Rosh Hashanah is not only about you. Part of your goal, part of your vision has to do with how you are giving and building the world. Tikkun Olam. It's a partnership. So the premise isn't actually accurate. When you're thinking to God about how to manifest yourself in the coming year, and you're talking to God, part of that is how you're going to help God's purpose, right? You're partnering with God. You're asking God for life. You're asking God to grant you the year of life. And you're obviously you want to do something positive with that year of life, right? So you're partnering with God. You're not saying, God, give me your life so I can be really selfish. You're saying, God, give me your life so I can fulfill the purpose of bringing humanity to a higher level of existence, right? So that's all part of Rosh Hashanah, and your individual and the collective are something that work together.
Fascinating. Well, I think that sets a really good tone for the holiday coming up this week. And I wish everyone a meaningful Sukkot who's listening to this podcast. And I wish everyone that they can take their ideas and put them into action. So that way they can serve the community the way you described and be able to grow in a meaningful way.
This is the holiday Simchat Senu, which means this is the holiday of our joy. And when you are living a life where you feel that your actions are connected to your higher source and you're expressing that in the world, you feel joy. And that's the culmination of this holiday.
Wow.
Celebration and joy.
Amazing. Well, I wish you an amazing Sukkot filled with celebration and joy. Thank you so much for being on this podcast. Hag Sameach to you as well.
All
And to the listeners, we'll see you on the next episode of Bad Jew.
Shalom.